Welcome to Sunday night chanting. Here we go. Yoso Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Sawakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipa Yatha Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Tammayang Bhagavantam Sadhamang Sasangang Imehi Sakha Rehi Atarahang Aropite Hiyapi Pujayama Sadhuno Bante Bhagava Suchira Parinibotopi Pachima Janata Nukampamanasa Ime Sakare Dugata Panakala Bhute Patikan Hatu Amhakam Dikharatang Hitaya Sukhaya Alahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddha Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vijja Charana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhammasarati Sata Deva Manusana Buddho Bhagava Tamahang Bhagavantang Abhipujayami Tamahang Bhagavantang Sirasa Namami Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko
Nasiko Opanayiko Pachata Veditapo Vinyuhi Tamahang Dhammang Abhipujayami Tamahang Dhammang Sirasa Namami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujjapatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yaya Patipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sami Chipatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yadita Chatari Purisayugani Atta Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutarang Punya Ketang Lokasa Tamahang Sangang Abhipujayami Tamahang Sangang Sirasa Namami. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outward and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ho, ho, ho. Very good. Typical Mahayana monks. And Nance, did you laugh? Ah. Very good. Okie dokie. Here we got our bit on the bottom. The first question today. I can open it. Hi, Ajahn Brahm. In the subconscious, is the subconscious the same as the mind without thinking? Is meditation similar to a trance? Can I use happiness to improve my practice? Thanks. Third question first. Can I use happiness to improve my practice? Of course you do. Imagine when you're really depressed. When you're really depressed, you can't see anything. You don't want to see anything. Sometimes it's like a big cloud, a big mist you're practicing through. Happiness is important. It's a sign of energy, an oomph. Am I an oomphy monk? Are there oomphy nuns over there? I'm glad you're laughing at each other. And is meditation similar to a trance? The difference between a trance and meditation, in a trance you don't know what's going on at all. A lot of the time you're unconscious. Like something is taking you over. Another being. Have you ever seen people in trances? It's quite interesting. That's like when you're under hypnosis. Somebody else is hypnotizing you in full hypnosis. And you don't know what's going on. You can't remember it if they tell you not to. So no, meditation is much more different than a trance. The other thing about meditation I would have to emphasize once again, in a trance you don't know what is going on. It's like almost like being under anesthetic in the hospital. But when you are in meditation, you're fully aware all the time, which is amazing. Okay? Now, when Ajahn Chah, you know what happened to him? He worked too much, that's my opinion, and so eventually he had a stroke. And when he did have a stroke, that what actually happened was all the monks, they met together, what should we do now? And they all kind of agreed, just let nature take its course. And as soon as the palace in Thailand heard about that, they said no. So you look after him, field of merit for everybody. So he paid for these medics on 8-hour shifts, so 24/7, and a few monks would do the duties for Ajahn Chah. And so it happened one night, happened actually many times, that when the medic was checking on Ajahn Chah, he was very still, he wasn't breathing. Now if you were the medic, what would you do? There's Ajahn Chah, the king is taking a personal interest in this monk's health, and he stopped breathing. Oh my goodness, he's going to die. Of course we're all going to die, but this particular medic did not want Ajahn Chah to die on his shift. So he wanted to do something, and all the other monks said, no, leave him alone. He's just getting into one of these deep meditations. And the interesting part of this, the reason I tell this story, is that, he didn't look like he was breathing. He looked like he was just really sort of not moving at all. So the medic decided to do a very wonderful experiment. This was actually how he talked to the other monks and said, what I will do is I'll just check his blood. And if his blood is always oxygenated, then he doesn't need to breathe. And that's what he did. He checked Ajahn Chah's blood. I think they had a drip in him or something. And the blood was always oxygenated, even though there was no way he was breathing. It's kind of fascinating. How did that actually happen? I don't know, but it satisfied the doctor. Because if you don't breathe, it's not breathing which kills you, it's the fact you've got no oxygen in your blood. And there was oxygen in his blood. So there's no problem. So you're perfectly safe when you're meditating. I haven't lost anybody yet. And don't say, well, it was always the first Ajahn Brahm. There's subconsciousness. The whole word, idea of subconsciousness, what does that mean? The whole idea is a very Western idea, like underneath the consciousness. Can't you be aware enough to know what's underneath and see the whole of the consciousness? But what you do have, people look at that word subconscious, and it's not really underneath the consciousness, it's not things you can't be aware of. I think somebody mentioned today that it's like the anusaya, these underlying tendencies, which are, always, when the consciousness is happening, your tendencies, inclinations, the things which you've done before. And that's like a karmic force on your consciousness. So a lot of times you always think in similar ways. You get afraid of the same things. When something happens, someone goes, bang! What does it do to you? It's just that's your inclination, which manifests in you. There's nothing in the consciousness process which you can't be aware of. So it's not really subconsciousness. Next question. How do I know if I'm on the right path? If you write that, you're not on the right path. Yes, you are. What is a right path? A right path is what leads to peace, happiness, freedom. What's freedom? Have you ever figured out what freedom? Are you free? Really? You sure? What is freedom? This is one of those stories, all the people who come here regularly know this one, that when one of the monks, they took over my duties and they started going to prisons to teach the prisoners, and one of them, the prisoners really liked him, and so one day they were asking, what's it like at Bodhinyana Monastery? How do you live, you guys? For example, what time do you get up in the morning? And the monk answered, 4 o'clock. And the prisoners were dumbfounded. They were shocked. 4 o'clock in the morning? And he said, well, it is optional. You can always get up earlier if you want to. I don't know, but honestly, I've been getting up early just all my life. So even here you get up, was it 4 before, 4. And over in monasteries, usually 3 or something. I don't know why I do that, but that's my life. But anyway, so you get up early, but even murderers don't have to get up that time. They can sleep in. Sometimes I feel I should have sleep in. Honestly, I've tried to sleep in quite a few times. I just can't do it. My body just won't allow me. It just wakes up. But anyway, so then, well, what do you do when you wake up? Can you watch the midnight movie on the TV? We don't have TVs in monastery. And those are the times when they did. Apparently, you don't have midnight movies on TV anymore. People always look on their internet. And that's where they get their entertainment. We know a lot of times that we don't even have good internet at Bodhinyana Monastery and other places. So no, we don't watch the midnight movie. What do you do in the morning when you wake up before breakfast? Oh, we just meditate. Well, okay, fair enough. And then, after meditation, what do you have for breakfast? Actually, I shouldn't really confess what we have for breakfast here. It's a feast. But in those days, all we'd have is, for years I had this is one of these, 3 Weetabix in, and some milk, and then a cup of tea with it. And that was it. And they said, well, that's all you can have. Well, those days we were lucky to have a breakfast. The only reason we started having a breakfast because we were doing so much work in the monastery, building it. And people wouldn't come to offer lunch until 10:30, 11 o'clock. So actually, when we were working, it doesn't really help working with an empty stomach. So I said, well, that's all. He said, in prison these days, you have a feast as well. Because you have some people from the West, some people from Malaysia. For some people from Sri Lanka. So, whatever country you're from, you can have the food you like. Try and keep you happy. Happy prisoners is no problem for the people who have to look after you. So you have so much over there, and you can choose. So that's terrible in your monastery. But what do you do after breakfast? And then he said, we work. And even I do that. One of my favourite stories, which I shouldn't do this, Ajahn Brahm, but I've got so many questions, but I can't resist. One of my favourite stories was that I was busy mixing concrete. Even I do that, mixing the concrete. And after mixing the concrete, when you're just shoveling sand and cement, then you get really dirty. And then after I got dirty, I was walking to my room to take a shower before lunch, and I really thought it was please excuse me, I'm not trying to upset anybody, I really thought it was an ice cream truck coming. And when I actually approached it, it wasn't an ice cream truck, it was a very high-class Sri Lankan lady with all her bangles. That's what it sounded like. Ding, 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 ding. It could have been. My mistake. So anyway, I went up to her and she said, I'm looking for Ajahn Brahm. Do you know where Ajahn Brahm is? And now I was mindful enough to say, well, if you just go down to where the Dharna Sala, that's our lunchroom is, he'd probably be down there in about 15 or 20 minutes. Thank you. So I rushed to my room, had a shower, got changed, tidied myself up a bit, and then went to go and see her. And that's when this lady, she had a quick conversation with me and said, I'm very pleased to meet you. This is a very lovely monastery. It's so peaceful and wonderful here. But if you don't mind me saying, that on the way here I met one of your monks, and he was so bedraggled and dirty, and a monk shouldn't look like that. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. I said, okay, well, I'll talk to him later, ma'am. Like, I'm honest, I did talk to myself. She never realised that dirty old monk she saw at first was actually me. Anyway, so, what am I beginning with this? How do I know I'm on the right path? When you're mindful enough, then don't worry what other people say. Prison, okay. I think I did that one. Oh yeah, no, I haven't quite yet. So that was just how hard we work. And then after lunch, you've seen us having lunch, everything goes in the same bowl. And if it goes in the same bowl, that's where I have the wonderful a fusion of, what were some of the other things I've had? I mentioned the strawberry ice cream on spaghetti, but no, I won't go into those. It all kind of gets mixed up. And so, why do you mix up your food? It's efficient. When you have food here, do you mix it all up? You do. Once it gets inside your tummy, it all gets mixed up. Why not mix it up beforehand? It makes it sort of easier. Does it? Anyway, that's what I used to do. So anyway, that's why I said that's disgusting. You're modest. They make you do that, mix up your lunch. But I suppose you can have dinner later on. Dinner? Dinner? What does that mean? We don't have dinner. That's our last meal of the day. So what do you do in the afternoon? For good health, can you play sport? I said no. You know why we don't play sport? Because monks and nuns are too kind. If we sort of played Australian football, that's such a violent sport. You actually, you jump at each other and you take each other down. I couldn't do that. What about the non-contact sports? Supposed to be non-contact, like playing soccer. I said, look, if I was playing soccer against another team, if they wanted the ball so much, I'd let go. You want it, it's yours. Isn't that what compassion is? And if they couldn't score a goal themselves, we'd score an own goal. We'd never win, we'd have a lot of fun. And what about in the evening? Can you play cards? Actually, there's a story about that. I can't resist. So, there was these 3 religious leaders, the Buddhist monk, the Jewish rabbi, and the Christian priests. They decided to get some harmony in this world. We should actually work together. So they needed to get to know each other and become friends. And the first thing they did was actually just to meet they couldn't meet for lunch because the monk couldn't eat lunch in the afternoon. So they couldn't, it was too early for the priest and things to get up for breakfast, and they couldn't have any dinner together, so they looked for something else to do. And eventually they decided, let's just have a bit of like friendly competition. Let's play cards. And that's easy enough to do, so they started arranging like these poker games in the afternoon. And soon it got serious. They were actually betting on playing cards. And with a big pot in front of them one day, somebody actually found out that these religious leaders were playing poker and gambling, and that was illegal in that city. So they all got arrested. I'm only making this up. But they got arrested, and they had to appear at a trial in front of a judge. And so the judge said, look, you're supposed to be honest people, straightforward. Let's get right down to it. And I asked the Christian priest, first of all, were you gambling? You're an honest, truthful guy, so were you gambling? And in front of the magistrate, he looked up so quickly, faster than the eye could catch, and just said to himself, but the judge never heard it, Jesus, forgive me. And he said, no. And so the judge said, okay, you can go, I believe you. And then he looked to the rabbi, were you gambling? And the rabbi put his hands behind his back and crossed his fingers. Now when I was a kid, putting your hand behind your back and crossing your fingers meant you could say anything. It didn't count. And so the rabbi said, no. And by this time, the judge, okay, you can go, Rabbi. Then the judge was getting really doubtful. So he told the monk, now monk, you don't believe in Jesus. Number 2, put your hands in front of you on the table. And venerable monk, were you gambling? And the monks said, "With whom, Your Honour? With whom?" And the moral of that story is always be the last one to answer, so you can figure out and escape. What am I doing? How do I know if I'm on the right path? If you're happy and peaceful and joyful, and if you're becoming, other people know, you're becoming more aware, and it's kind of the story of my life, and probably most of you. Sometimes you learn a bit of this and learn a bit of that, listen to this monk, that nun, that teacher, and after a while you can actually feel just what really works for you, and what actually makes you peaceful, and what makes you aware and happy, and less of problems in life. And eventually that you can have mindfulness and exactly know what it is, and how gorgeous it can be. I don't know if any of you have gone to the toilet, and after telling that story this morning, I had to go to the toilet before I went to lunch, but I made a point of not looking in the toilet bowl because I didn't want to be even later than I was. So be careful, okay? You know what I'm saying, don't you? None of you grimaced or laughed. Anyway, I hope it was right. And then not just getting good mindfulness, but getting understanding and insight. Insight, the little things. Like I said to somebody, when my father died, I never cried. And even though he was the motivation for opening the door of your heart for me, I loved him very much. I loved him so much that I didn't feel I needed to cry. I felt so happy that he'd been my father for 16 years. That was enough. I can't cry that he was my father. It's a wonderful thing to have. I had gratitude for what I had. And I did not have, even as a young kid, sadness for what was taken away. You can understand it? Never cried about him since. Never had to. However, I remember him, whenever anybody does their sharing of merits, of course I never say what I'm up to, but they're sharing the merits and I'm doing the chanting. I'm sharing it with my mum and dad as well, and grandparents who looked after me. I really sort of feel great about that. So then you're on the right path, a path of lesser suffering in this life. Other people might not understand it, but it works. And of course, on the right path to meditation, much when you can sit down perfectly still, and nothing bothers you. You sit there for a long time, happy as can be. Happy, more happy than anything else in your life. That's pretty much on the right path. Okay. Dear Ajahn Brahm, recently I got sick, seriously. Seriously? I don't understand serious. Yes, I do. So sometimes I've got to be very careful because when someone gets very, very, very sick, and it's so painful, so what do? At that time I was okay to let go. After that situation, my wife asked me, please don't die before her, because she worried a lot and she cannot bear the sadness if I die before her. She needs to come on retreat. Now that thought worried me. I know nature can take my life in no time, so how can I make my mind if I had to face situations like that, death? I don't want my loved ones to suffer because of me. Please advise. Look, you can actually tell your loved ones to please learn some Dhamma. No one can decide who's going to die first, who's going to die last. But one of the problems, there was Jane and, I remember Nurse Jane. I forget his surname now, but he was a whitewater rafter. He was really young, he used to be incredibly fit. That was his business, and having a lovely time going to some beautiful parts of the world, charging people for it, and just whitewater rafting. But he got cancer. And I don't know how it happened, but I went to his apartment, him and his wife's apartment, over in North Fremantle. North Fremantle? somewhere around there. And anyway, so many times, because he was close to death. And so I kept on seeing him and seeing him and seeing him, and he wasn't dying. He should have been. And the doctor was surprised. And so I remember being there, and he looked sort of so sickly and so thin. And so I just looked at him and just understood what was going on. You're on the right path, it's easy to get insight. And I looked at his wife, Jane, and said to her, have you given your husband permission to die yet? And I remember she never replied. She got the message straight away, she trusted me. And she jumped on the bed and put her hands really softly but kindly around her emaciated partner and gave him a little loving hug and said, Steve, I think, Steve, you can die. I give you permission to die. Don't need to be upset. I'll be fine. And of course the two of them cried. He died, I think, that night. And you can understand what was going on. That, this is somebody you love very much, your wife. They're still quite young in their relationship. And the last thing he wanted to do was make his wife upset. So all she needed to do was to, seriously, lovingly, look into his eyes and say, Steve, it's okay to die. I don't want you to suffer anymore. And that's what he needed. And that evening he passed away. He had a wonderful funeral, because I should be shut up and be quiet sometimes, but I couldn't help but say, you were whitewater rafting. In the funeral laws in West Australia, you don't have to get an ordinary coffin, you can make your own. And because he was a whitewater rafter, his friends made this coffin just look like a canoe, with a couple of oars on top even. Their problem was it was the right size, but they made it out of this really heavy wood, jarrah wood, and it weighed a ton. And it took about not just 4 people, like 6 or 7 people to lift it up. And when funerals don't need to be negative. When they actually put it on, it was the external crematorium over in Fremantle. When they actually put it on the conveyor, to go through, that conveyor could hardly handle it. And so, when I did the chanting and then the conveyor started moving, it was certainly struggling. And so I only went halfway through when the door closed. It got stuck. Now, if you ever want to see fear, our anxiety, look at the funeral directors when something like that happens. They went white. I thought they were going to be the next one in the coffin. But the wife, Jane, she jumped on the coffin and tried to open the door and push the coffin through. And then some of Steve's friends and said, number one, the first time he had a new car, he crashed it. His first day in his coffin, he crashed it as well. And they looked at Jane, the wife, and said, are you trying to get rid of him that much? You're pushing him through into the crematorium. And it became like a fun fest. And because of that, it's one of the best funerals I've ever seen in my life and been part of. And he said that's exactly how Steve would have loved it, when everything goes wrong. So that was a great funeral, that was. And that was just because I shouldn't tell stories. Stop it, Ajahn Brahm. Would you like your loved one to suffer when you die? No, look, please leave me alone. Just, we've had a wonderful life together. I can't stop this. And I want my loved ones to pass easily. And you don't know the power of that, just giving someone permission to die. It's a beautiful thing to do. Next question, how to differentiate between inner chat and the knower? Thank you, Ajahn. Inner chat is almost being disrespectful to the knower, because the chat is not reality. And that's one of the reasons why. Do you remember when I did this little session for you over in Dhammasara? I just go over there very regularly. I don't have much time. I haven't actually been there for a while. Please don't mention that. But anyway, I was going for something else, committee meeting or something. And then they asked me, "Look, Ajahn Brahm, can you teach us some Dhamma?" Just anything. And I said, okay. So I said, I need to go to the men's toilet. It's nothing to do with number twos. I need to go to the men's toilet. And they said, it was over there. I knew where it is. I remember helping design that first building. And so that I think you were a bit surprised. Why did I ask where it was? And I went to the men's toilet and I pretended, didn't do anything sort of too bad, I pretended to urinate on the door. Do you remember that? And they thought I was going even more crazy than I usually am. What are you doing? I said, well, it says it on there, men's toilet. So that's where I'm going. They said, Ajahn Brahm, men's toilet is a sign. It means inside the door. That's where the toilet is. Oh, really? That's the difference between the words and the reality. You know where the women's toilets are? We've got signs there. But please don't urinate on them. Go inside. That's where your business is supposed to be done. And that's an exaggeration, but that's what happens, difference between words and reality. The words are the signposts, the maps, the inner chat. That's all about the descriptions. It can get close, but it can't really capture. You think about things, you can actually see into them. About just goes around, never actually lands anywhere. The next one, it says, I am. Answer, no you're not. I remember one of these cartoons I saw years and years ago. It's Descartes, René Descartes. I think, therefore I am. And René Descartes was talking to a horse. And René Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And the horse replies, you think, therefore you're what? The horse won that argument. I am what? Nothing. When the meditation starts to feel a little bit good, only a little bit, I start to get excited, wanting it to go deeper. This stops the momentum of the meditation. How do I overcome getting excited when meditation feels good to allow it to go deeper? How not to get excited? This was one of Ajahn Chah's similes. I say this because you remember it. This is serious stuff. He gave the simile of the still forest pool. And I remember hearing it. And sometimes I see some of these books or passages called still forest pool. And that's not what Ajahn Chah said. What I heard, a still forest pool, is that when these monks in Thailand go wandering around from place to place, carrying everything they owned with them, you'd always try and find like a place where there was a river or a lake, somewhere you can wash, and also just wash any robes and fill up your water bottle. And of course there's many of such places in the forests and jungles in Thailand. So when you got there, you'd always make sure you got there early enough so you can wash and clean up any stuff you have. And then you put your mosquito net umbrella maybe about 10 meters away from the edge of the water, roughly whatever is possible. And then he said sometimes, even though there was no electricity or lights in those areas, still, moonlight or starlight, sometimes you could see what was going on. So often, he said, in the early part of the evening, he would just sit there and just look at what happened in the lake. Look at the animals coming out to drink and play by the still forest pool. He said the usual animals would come out, but all of those animals, their sense of sight was very weak. A lot of the time they'd listen, but especially they would smell. And they would know if there was a human being around. And of all the animals, in those jungles, the most dangerous of all those wild animals were called human beings. They killed more tigers than tigers would ever kill them. So the animals were terrified of humans, and so much so that if they smelt or heard a human being, they would run back into the forest or into the bushes, and they wouldn't come out all night. They said sometimes, if you're a monk, you know how to be still, especially in Ajahn Brahm. He'd have his eyes open, but be perfectly still, not move. The animals, they could not smell him. They could not even hear any sound from where he was sitting. And so they would come out together with their family, the little babies, the cubs, and they would play by the still forest pool. And I haven't seen this. Sometimes these pictures or these movies done of Nature Channel, of like the animals in the wild, with their children. It's like entertaining. And it's like fun to watch. So sometimes Ajahn Chah will watch all these animals play by the still forest pool, as long as he kept quiet. If he said, wow, or laughed, they would know someone was looking and run away. So he said that was a wonderful thing to do, but some days he sat so still that once the ordinary animals came out, then some beautiful animals came out he'd never seen before. And his teachers had never told him existed. These wonderful, beautiful animals, but they were so shy. If he moved, or if he just under his best said, wow, they would hear it and they would run away, no matter how thirsty they were. So some of these animals were incredibly beautiful and rare. And he told me that those are like nimittas, beautiful lights which come up in the mind. They are very rare. But if you can be still enough and don't move, then they come up and they play by the still forest pool of your mind. And you can enjoy them. A huge amount of bliss. But if you say, wow, they all run away. And they don't come out again for days. And then sometimes you're really, really still. And even the next level of animals come out to play, which are even more amazing, but so shy. Those are like the jhanas. If you're really, 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 really still by the forest pool, they come out to play. But if you just mention anything, wow, then they run away. And I've told that story many times, and I remember this one guy, he worked for the Sunday Times newspaper here in Perth. They don't get much news, nothing much happens in Perth, and so it's quite a boring job. But he said that one day there was a rumour going around that the Australian pop singer Kylie Minogue, that she had a bit of a breakdown and that she was hiding in Cable Beach Resort up in Broome. Just a rumour. But his editor said, well, we have to check it out, nothing else is going on. Would you like to go up to Broome for a couple of days and check it out? It's a beautiful place up there. The newspaper pays all the fees, the nice hotel and a nice new pair of swimming trunks so you can go in the ocean, and a place in the resort to stay. So he went up there. He didn't know if she was up there or not, but it's worth a go, just have a nice free holiday. And he was crawling in the bushes on part of Cable Beach Resort. And he said he actually saw her there. He got the scoop of his career. When he was very pleased, I thought, that's not very nice for Mrs. Minogue, How do you pronounce it? Minogi? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So he saw her, and he said, all of those teachings about the still forest Paul, that's how he could take the photograph. He had to be so still so she couldn't hear him or suspect he was watching. And he took the photographs. And he came to say thank you me for teaching him how to thank me for teaching him about nimittas and how not to disturb them. And he could get the snap of his career. Poor old Kali. Anyway, that's a good meditation, and that's what happens, how you can actually, these things stay. And after a while, you realize it's nice to be still. You don't want to disturb anything. And then you can actually notice how to get these nimittas and even better things, Jhana. And if you don't get a job after finishing this retreat, I can always give you a reference for some tabloid. Okay, next question. I was about to get into a good meditation before lunch. Suddenly I realized that I have a duty that I put my name against. So I decided to not proceed with the meditation, as I don't want to break a promise. Whoa. What should I do if it happens? Next time, is it okay to miss the duty? Yes. I totally give you permission to miss the duty, as long as it's not for me. And no, that's only a joke. Please break the duty. What are you doing here? You are doing here to get these beautiful meditations, and don't sacrifice the meditation for a duty. If no one turns up, assume that they've had a duty, they've had a good meditation, and that's why they don't turn up. Assume that. Give them a break. And then if they don't come for a duty, and the food is late or the food is not good here, don't worry, because I don't eat the food over here. I go to Jhana, body jnana. No, I shouldn't say things like that. There's always somebody else who can help. But the time you have a good meditation, that's so precious. Please just carry on meditating. Enjoy it when it comes. And please all know that it's okay to miss a duty. Dear Ajahn, for the Vipallasa, view, perception and chitta, that's thought, can chitta mean more than thoughts? It can do, but not in other contexts, like the state of mind. Can you give an example? It's much, much better to look at chitta in that context as thinking. View, perception, thinking. Because from your views, whatever your views are, that changes the way you perceive things. It's wonderful to see that. If I say that, this is stupid, but I mentioned this already, where do young people fall in love? And dark places. Why? Because you want to. And so you make a dark place, and then just the ordinary old fat fellow you're going to dinner with just looks like, I don't know, Brad Pitt? I don't know, who's the hot guys these days? I'm at a disadvantage here, I'm old. Or, this your wife, or your fiancée, and she looks like, I used to say Angelina Jolie, but who's the most famous lady actress? No, it's Taylor Swift. Is that right? So it's amazing when it's dark how your perception kind of has some freedom to see what you want to see, not what's really there. And more seriously, this actually happened. One of our members from the Armadale group years and years and years ago. Now, her friend said she was in big trouble, so please talk to her. So I talked to her. And she really was in big trouble. She had 2 kids who went to school. And they never came home. The reason was because they were put in care. They'd found out that her husband was sexually abusing both kids. And the first thing which, when I talked to her, how she felt so guilty that she let down her kids. A mother's supposed to protect her children. But, because the first time she couldn't believe that could happen. She still loved her husband until she found out the truth. And she said, now, how could I have not seen the signs? The people at school saw all the signs. And that's actually, you could see just how fear of something which was going to break down her marriage and her home was actually stopped her seeing the truth. She couldn't perceive it. And she dealt with it so quickly. Because she did some meditation, I remember that she said, look, I have to keep seeing my psychologist appointed for me. But look, I can't love him anymore, my ex-husband, but, I don't want to harm him or hurt him. She was a good Buddhist meditator. She let it go. And the psychologist said, it's impossible to let it go so quickly. Well, she talked to me about it. And then, so I had to write a letter to the psychologist. Look, in Buddhism, we can let go much quicker than you believe. And she had, truly. And I remember she kept in touch. She moved back to UK, but then she always kept in touch. Her two kids, grew up really well. And by accepting it and not sort of blaming anybody, she had to, separate from that relationship. He had to go to jail. But at least she did a wonderful thing for herself and her kids. Oh, this is much better. Okay, I didn't actually answer it. Okay, afterwards, put it down. Vipallasa, the view, perception, and mind and thought. It is, why do people think silly things? And the reason is because either you block out things or you want things. This experiment, I think many of you know this. This was done by my friend Bernard Carr. He was the president of the Psychic Research Society in London, but also professor of theoretical physics at London University. And he told me about this experiment, the levitating flower pot experiment. It was done in Imperial College in London. It was a really good college. And this guy said he now knew how levitation works. And he made his demonstration in front of his peers, other professors, lecturers, researchers in physics. And so they were all waiting for him in this lecture room, on the bleachers. And then he came in onto the table where they did their experiments, and he said, look, I'm carrying in a flower pot. You can come and see, there's nothing with it. It's just a flower pot with a flower in it. There's no strings attached, so they just investigate to make sure. And I'm going to put this on the table. And he put it on the table, and he said, I'm now going to levitate this flower pot. And they had all the best equipment you could have in a university like that, ultraviolet, infrared, all sorts of sensors, because he said, if it works, I want to have a record of it, because to prove it. But he said, I need your help. And the help he needed, he requested from all these old professors and other friends. I need you to chant, just very simple, the Hindu holy word Om. And it was incredible. I wish I was there just to see all these professors chanting Om, Om, Om. Because the professors I knew would never do anything like that. They'd be embarrassed. But they said, okay. They were all chanting Om, Om, Om. And the flower pot lifted. It worked. they levitated the flower pot. It was recorded, ultraviolet, infrared, everything you can possibly imagine, to prove that this was not just imagination, this actually worked. And then when they lowered it down again, and they turned off all the machines, he asked, what do you think about that? And a couple of professors, think about what? That flower pot stayed on the table all the time, they said. You look, got the proof here, fake. I had my eyes open, the professor said, I was watching. That flower pot never moved. And they showed him, and all the others said, yes it did, we saw it too, it actually lifted up. And that was the whole purpose of the experiment. Then the guy confessed there was an incredibly huge electromagnet under the table. And when they all started chanting Om, that's when they turned on the current. If they hadn't chanted Om, the sound of turning on a heavy electric current, that everyone would have heard it go as the current started flowing through the wires into the electromagnet. That's the only reason for the Om, to hide what was really happening. But he said that's not the purpose of the experiment. That flower pot did lift. And you are supposed to be an observational scientist. Why couldn't you see it actually lift? That's vipalasas. If you don't want to see it, if it's almost impossible, you can't see it. That's one of the reasons why there is no such thing as bare insight. It's only when the 5 hindrances are totally suppressed. No wanting, no denial, the stillness, no sloth and torpor, no restlessness and worry, no doubt. Without that, what you see is often what you want to see, not what's actually real. That's why you do need those 5 hindrances to be subdued, and then you can trust what you're seeing. Next question, I want to do this one. If I'm getting a lot of bliss arising, great. How long should this maintain itself before it is considered solid enough to be first jhana? It's not just bliss which causes the first jhana. Afterwards, when you come out of these meditations, wow, that was really something. And of course you'll ask yourself, what was happening? If you can hear any sound, it's not first jhana. If you can think, not first jhana. If you can feel the body, not first jhana. The 5 senses have to have stopped. And all you're aware of is the mind. It's the first time the 5 senses stop. Vivichehi kamehi. Karma there, K long A, M-A, refers to the 5 senses. 5 senses have stopped. And this is where we know it's a first jhana. You can't feel the body. If somebody touches you, you can't feel it. That's why when these things happen, a lot of times, people just keep sitting here and you all go to bed. Or I do the chanting, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You can't hear any of it. And you're sitting right in front of me. You can't hear it. And even if somebody picks you up, this guy, he's passed away now, but he used to be in the British Army, and he used to have these migraines. And the only way to overcome his migraines was to go into a dark barn somewhere, and he used to say just to go inside. He had no training in meditation, but he went inside and then he couldn't feel the migraines anymore. And one day, he was a warrant officer, so in charge of these troops, and only a small lot of troops, and they were told to take a break, have a cup of tea, and so they went into the barn, and then the order came out, no, look, something's come up, get back in the truck and go to this next destination. and they forgot him. And when they realized they'd left the officer sort of in the barn, they turned around and they went in there and picked him up and then put him back in the truck. And that was actually Ron. Ron Story. Remember him, Nordia? And so they put him back in the truck, and then that's when he came out of his meditation. He was in the truck. How did I get in here? Even soldiers, not the most gentle of people, picking up another soldier and dumping him in the back of the truck, he couldn't feel that. It's just deep inside. That's kind of what a jhana is like. Will second jhana arise naturally from there? Yes. The second jhana is inside the first jhana. Third jhana is inside the second. The fourth is inside the third. As you're more still, more things fade away. And then just go deeper into these jhanas. Anyway, next question. Since Descartes, reality has been divided into what is physical and what is mental. More recently, a purely material worldview has been adopted by some, where the mind is epiphenomenal and is secondary to what is physical material. What is reality made from? Is it physical, mental, a combination of something different? That's actually not true, because quantum science put all that to bed. You know, the very fact, I love telling the story of Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger was a quantum physicist, and he had this thought experiment. In other words, he never actually did it. He would be put in jail for doing it. That imagine a box, and you put your cat inside, and in the box there is a cyanide capsule, and it's broken if a cesium atom decays. It's got a 50% chance of decaying, 50% chance of not decaying. So when that box is closed, that no one knows if that cat is alive or dead. It's got a 50% chance of decaying. It's a quantum process, the decay of a cesium atom. And so the question was, with that box closed, is the cat alive or dead? And all the scientific evidence shows that cat is neither alive nor dead. It's in a third state. I like cats. I would never do it to one of the cats I like. But that's the truth of the matter. If you can't accept that, that's because of the vipalasas. You think that's impossible. But actually that's the truth. That's the weird thing about quantum phenomena. Even Einstein could not accept things like that. He said, "Oh, the God does not play dice," his famous quote. But that's much closer to the truth than anything else. Can you accept that? That's the truth. You need a mind to create reality. When you open the box, then you can see if that cat is alive or dead. But before you open the box, it's neither. It's not philosophy, that's hard science. Dear Ajahn Brahm, after having a deep meditation, please don't have nightmares tonight. When I do sort of deep talks, and it's real, I know what I'm talking about. But when you have deep talks like that, and sometimes that makes people just think and think and think and think and think and think. That can't be right. It is. After having a deep meditation, how can I instruct the mind to get insights? At what stage should I give instructions straight after coming out of meditation? You don't need to give any instructions at all. As the Buddha once said, after the jhana, you don't have to make a thought. You don't have to decide, exert will, oh may I see things as they truly are. It's natural. Tamachat. That's time, translating to Thai. It's tamata, automatic. You don't have to say anything. As soon as you get into these jhanas and come out, just your mind is clear, and you can't not see it. You have to make sure you have an idea of what the mind is going to look at, like anicca or dukkha, anatta or something, but it's so clear in front of you. You don't decide. It's automatic. It's also, I'm sorry, but you can't decide not to get enlightened. I know some people think, oh, I better not stay here too much longer. If I get enlightened, what's my husband going to say? So it's too late. Can you please speak about rebirth? What exactly is reborn? It's the process, the stream of consciousness. Not one thing, but just what wakes up in the morning. Is it the same person who goes to bed tonight? Or is it like a process? You get a little bit older, you might get a bit more healthy, you may get more sick, I don't know. But it's not the same which went to bed. It's similar, but not the same. This is one of the reasons why that process, that's how rebirth happens. There are stories of wise beings who have awareness of past lives. How can this be if there is no self? There's no self. Just like, you see a river. What is a river? Is a river a being? You look on the bridge and you can see it looks the same as the day before, but all the water which was there yesterday has now flowed past. It looks the same. But over a few weeks or months or years, even with floods or the force of the current in the river, it does change its course sometimes. Sometimes it dries up, sometimes it floods, makes another course. It's still called out the river. It's never the same from one day to the other. But if I ever see like the Thames River, I always know that's the Thames. Is it? So, who is you? What exactly is reborn? It's just a stream of consciousness. There are stories of wise beings who have awareness of past lives. How can this be if there is no self? You realize it's no self. It's just this process which keeps going on. And you can recollect some of it. A process, not a thing. How is this awareness packaged when reborn? It's not packaged. Okay, a mango. Sorry to mention mangoes. I love mangoes. They're in season now. And I shouldn't really talk about food this time of night. You may have some dreams about mangoes tonight. So, suppose tomorrow morning you get a mango and you eat it, and you put the mango seed in the soil here at Jhana Grove. And if you're the caretaker who actually stay here, you can actually see it almost every day. You put the seed down, it splits, and a little shoot comes up, and it goes bigger and bigger. It breaks through the top of the soil, and then it becomes like a blade of grass, and then it becomes like a small sapling, a tree. You can actually see it's got a wooden basis to it. And you see it grow, and then you see it puts out branches or small branches, think like other shoots, but it's a branch, and then it grows into a sapling. It's got many branches, and then eventually got lots of leaves on it, and eventually, after a few years, at the basis of those leaves, little flowers come out, they get pollinated, and at the base of those flowers you get a bud, which is a mango growing, and soon it gets nice and yellow and reddish, and then you've got a mango ready to fall. It doesn't become an apple, it's a mango. Just like when you die and get reborn, there is some connection between who you were before. Not the same, not different. This is like the law of karma, many connections over many years. And that becomes a new mango. What's been reincarnated? As the Buddha said, it's not the same as a mango which you put in the ground, but not different, connected by a process. Okay. Next question. Is there any effort required for breath meditation, or should it come naturally if mind, body are at ease? The main effort is not to do anything. To protect yourself from doing stuff. Just like the simile I read, sometimes it's useful getting on an aircraft because I do get stories from everywhere. And in this particular, it was at Air Asia, I think. Nothing to do, so I looked at the in-flight magazines. You know, once I went, actually to go from UK to Thailand, I went on Aeroflot, the Soviet Union's aircraft. It was the cheapest I could get, but I'll never do that ever again. Because what happened, it's about 3 or 4 hours from London airport to Moscow. And when I was flying there, the service was nothing like you get these days. And even the flight attendants, they looked like former Soviet Union gymnasts, like hammer throwers and stuff. and so I was thirsty. So I saw one of the flight attendants walk past. This is absolutely true. And so I asked for a cup of tea. That's all, just for a cup of tea. And she turned around to me and said, "Niet!" I never asked another question all flight. I was scared. Yeah. So the service actually was not something you could praise. But I never argued. Anyway, in this Air Asia flight, in the in-flight magazine, in the Aeroflot magazines, it was all about the latest 5-year plan or 10-year plan or what dams they were making up in Siberia somewhere. It was not very interesting, I must admit. But anyhow, this was the Aeroflot flight. In the in-flight magazine, one of the pilots was writing a story about the future of aircraft. And he said, in the future of aircraft, he said, in the cabin up front, there'll only be 2 beings up in the cabin up front. It'll be locked. And one of the people in the cabin will be the pilot, just one pilot. And his job, and the second person being in the cockpit, the pilot and the dog. Just those 2. And the job of the pilot, the only job the pilot has in the cockpit is to feed the dog. And the only job of the dog is to bite the pilot if he touches any of the controls. In other words, it has to be totally automatic, because that's the safest. And you have to have a pilot in there, otherwise no one likes to fly in that type of plane. And it has a dog there, and the dog is actually to bite the pilot if he touches anything. And that's the future of safe aircraft throughout the world. So anyway, if you ever go in a modern aircraft in the future, just see who's actually in the cabin. If that's all you see, the pilot and the dog, this is a very modern. So what's your job in meditation? Keep your hands off things. Let it happen naturally. Don't disturb it. Let go. Detach. Put down the cup. Stop doing things. Relax to the max. Get the message? I know that sometimes people think, oh no, I've got to do something. I would do it at the beginning, but then after you've done enough, then sit down and shut up and just let it happen. Get out of the way. Your body and mind is much wiser, and it'll happen quite naturally. Next question. May we have soft wooden floor for the 3 rooms for walking meditation? The carpets need a good wash and dry. No, they don't. They're fine. For a wooden floor, it's easy to take care of and cleanliness. Just vacuum and mop. The reason why there's our yoga mats, if you don't know. Number one, they're red. And I got those, some of them are orange, but I really tried to order enough red carpets, or rather, red carpets. I want to make walking meditation red carpeted, so you can actually walk comfortably there. And it's also, I made sure that other than the red carpet, there's hard concrete. So nobody is encouraged to walk on the concrete. Otherwise, if you had a wooden floor like here, there'd soon be somebody who walked diagonally. From one corner to the other. That happens because they want to, okay, I'm important, I'm special. So you get to own the whole walking meditation room. No one else can use it. So do it that way. It's a psychology that people actually walk on the red yoga mats. If you don't, it's really hard. So there's a purpose behind that. Next question. Uh-oh, it is. Can we ask Venerable, or does it say vulnerable? Venerable. Who is that? To have a Dhamma talk for us. Somebody. I don't know the name, must be a nickname. Venerable.
Ajahn Brahm.
Oh, Venerable Bhikkhunis. To have a Dhamma talk. Yes, of course you can ask them. Don't know if they will do it. You can always ask. That's like all of my books which have got my name on it. I always say you can always ask for your money back. That's a promise, and I don't break that promise. You won't get your money back, but you can always ask. Yeah, why not? Ask them. So maybe we're probably going to finish in another 10 or 15 minutes, so you can ask them afterwards. Is that a good time? Or early in the morning? 2 o'clock in the morning? Some of the other time is taken. No, yeah, sure. But no, they can have a meeting and find out when. When I feel an area of pain or tension in my body, should I give it my attention, send it love, kindness, etc., consciously to soften it? That's a good idea. Area of pain or tension in my body, give it some kindness. It's amazing what happens. Sometimes that kind of vanishes and disappears. Actually, you can feel when you give it kindness, things relax there. They get better. Give it a try. Next question. Greetings, Ajahn. Does generational trauma exist? Is it just the law of karma playing a role? What do we say to the family whose family and those members just passed away? Thank you. Generational karma. I sometimes remember going off to Germany, and I was quite surprised. If I told a joke about Adolf Hitler, then I got really criticised for that. And I thought, this is so many generations ago, you're still really suffering about that. I said, yes, we are. And I think it's because many other people in the world kind of criticize, not just the people who were there at the time, but, their children and grandchildren. I think that's really unfair. I don't think generational trauma has to exist. But if you expect it to be, then sometimes the people who expect it create it. It was not your fault. I was British, and British aren't supposed to like Japanese or Germans. I got some amazing friends who are Germans and Japanese. They're fine. Oh, no, what have I got to be critical about them for? Oh, but his father probably killed your father. No. That was totally different. And who was the worst? You know, I remember reading about one of these airmen, actually air boss, who was British, who did terrible things, bombing, I think, Dresden, carpet bombing. Every man, woman and child was getting killed in there. But of course, because the British Army won, was one of the winners, they were never sort of criticised at all. That's actually kind of wrong. And anyway, I always, as a monk, was always taught amazing just what happens with compassion. So I remember telling this joke, and I think it's pretty accurate. Not really a joke, but just say an Adolf Hitler dies. What would happen to him? Would he get reborn? Where would he get reborn? And I say that the people who actually send you to these hell realms, actually they don't really send you there at all. They remind you of what you've done, and you're the one who decides where to go. And these are heavenly beings who do this. If I was a heavenly being, and this Adolf Hitler just appeared, and said, where should I go? I've done terrible things. I would teach him forgiveness. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. Punishing does not help overcome those problems. Much better to sort of forgive and let go. And then I'd probably tell him, look, that's what I know, but other people don't understand that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to shave off that silly moustache and change your hairstyle and send you out to a heaven realm, but don't tell anybody who you are. Do you think that's a good idea? People who do really bad things, is there such a thing as a terrorist in this world? Are they a terrorist because they just have just one cause and they just kill people for it? What else have they done in their life? Can we judge a person just because of one or two acts or a year of acts or a couple of years of acts? What else have they done in their life? It's almost impossible to judge anybody. I already mentioned that fellow Ronnie Cray. He was notorious, but he was so generous. That's my impression of him. Isn't everybody allowed a chance? So anyway, it's a good job I'm not a judge, because if you was, and you did anything wrong, please select me, and then I'd always let you off with kindness. Anyway, you okay? Carry on? You want another question about that later on? Thanks for conducting this retreat. I've read in your books that you mention many times to be aware of how the mind is working. My question is, the mind itself is the only tool available to watch the mind? How do you watch the mind using the mind? Have you ever used a mirror? You've used the eyes to watch the eyes? That's why sometimes they call it the mirror of mindfulness. You can all watch yourself, how you work. I have to shave myself once a fortnight and once a day. I don't let anybody else do that. I shave myself. How do I do that? Pretty easy. You use a mirror. I hear you emphasize relaxing and letting go, receptive modes of practice. Do you also recommend any active practice where we try to change or steer our experience towards well-being? This is the active practice of steering your mind towards well-being. Because as you experience more and more, you see how counterproductive it is to get angry when someone annoys you. It's much better just to be kind to them, and then they change. I know that some people say, oh, Ajahn Brahm, you don't live in the real world. You live with all these wonderful monks and nuns and lay people who come to Jhana Grove. This is like the cream of the crop of all the people who live in this world. So, but the real world is very hard. And so the story behind this is once there was this snake. And the snake was very aggressive, malicious and mean. He would bite people just for fun. His fun, of course, not the other people. So the people were really scared of this bad snake. So much so they really understood about where he was and told their kids never to go close to that area. But anyway, like many beings, the snake, grew old in years. And he started to wonder, snakes, they're living beings. What happens to them when they die? Where do snakes go? He hadn't got any idea at all, but he had heard that close by to where he lived, there was this holy snake who lived on top of this mountain. And he always sat on high rocks. And so he decided just to go and check out this holy snake. Now he was very proud, bad snake, so he wore some sunglasses, a hat and a raincoat so no one could recognize him. And when he arrived, he couldn't believe there was all these people, just like you, sitting on chairs and on cushions, and they were listening to this holy snake. And as he was listening in the back, he didn't want to be recognized. All the people in the back seats over there. He didn't want to, I'm not really meaning this, on the back seat. He got really interested. What this holy snake was saying started to make sense. First of all, it made sense. Then the bad snake got inspired. And then eventually the bad snake got totally converted. And at that point, the bad snake took off the glasses and the hat and the raincoat and slithered to the front. And he was so apologetic to the holy snake. So I always said terrible things about you my whole life. And now I realize that you are real and kind and wise. And please, holy snake, can you forgive me for all the bad things I've done in my life? And can I ask you to give me the 5 precepts? So the first time people were inspired by seeing this really bad snake who killed many people now become a 5 preceptor. He wouldn't kill anymore, steal, commit adultery, lie, or take alcohol or anything like that. And on the way out, the bad snake, now converted, put a donation in the box on the way out. Coins, of course. The reason why people donate coins is you can actually hear it. So, and then the bad snake, now converted, went to live by his usual hole. And he would never harm anybody from this day on, he thought. And soon people got to know this bad snake was not dangerous anymore. And so sometimes they would walk right past him by mistake. And even though they saw this big Greenpeace badge, on the snake, the snake's shoulder. What does he have there? Amnesty badge as well was on there. He's really a good snake. But no one realized that. And so they'd always actually be careful. And eventually the kids started seeing him. And they weren't afraid anymore. But there's some kids always naughty. And some of those kids started abusing that snake. They said to him, "You're not a real snake, are you? Just a slimy creep. You're just an overgrown worm. You're not a real snake." And that really hurt the snake, because the snake was proud. He said, "Look, I can bite you so quickly." "No, you can't." And they started throwing things at him. And that poor snake got really bruised and hurt. And then they actually took sticks and started hitting him on the back with the sticks. And the poor snake had to take it. He had no form of defense. And he said, these 5 precepts, they might be okay in a monastery, but in the real world, they don't work. So he crawled up to where the bad snake lived. He crawled up there, and the holy snake, so he crawled up to where the holy snake lived, and the holy snake saw him coming, all bruised and bandaged, with band-aids all over him. Oh, come on, let me enjoy my telling of the story. And the holy snake, what happened to you? And the bad snake goes, it's your fault. What do you mean my fault? Said the holy snake. Well, you told me to keep the 5 precepts. Look what happens to you if you keep the 5 precepts in today's world. People are really bad and mean. You've got to be bad and mean with them, otherwise you can't protect yourself, said the bad snake. And the holy snake said, oh, you stupid snake. You dumb snake. I told you not to bite anybody, but I never told you not to hiss. And that was the moral of the story. You know that was actually told by the Buddha? I added quite a lot to it. But the main one was told by the Buddha. So as a snake, you can always hiss. And that will send the kids running a long way away, but just don't bite. So the same to protect yourself. You can always hiss, but never bite. Okay. I don't know if I've got more left today than yesterday, but I've done quite a lot. Look at all these I've done. How do we let go of daydreaming during meditation? I generally do not have a strong negative thoughts, but positive daydreams are the ones I have most attachments to. Why can't you do daydreams at night time? That's the pace of dreams, isn't it? Not now. So how do you let go of daydreams? After a while, reality, when the mind becomes very peaceful and pure and blissful, is far better than any daydream. When you get to those sorts of stages, the bliss starts happening, then you don't ever want to do daydreams. I sometimes see circles of throbbing light behind my eyes, sometimes different colours. When this happens, should I make the light my focus? It feels quite nice. If it feels quite nice, give it a try. You don't actually make it your focus. When it gets really nice, you can't help but you can't ignore it. It might turn out to be nimitta. What are the jhanas that you speak of? Please explain. How long are you going to be here tonight? Dhamma talk. Okay, yeah, okay. But anyway, the 4 jhanas are the standard, consistent, all the time definition of the Buddha of Samma Samadhi. The last factor of the Eightfold Path. That's what Samma Samadhi means, the 4 jhanas. I tend to get irritated a lot, especially with the people closest to me. What can I do to overcome this? Please don't kill them all. That's what people want to do. It's like the idea of being a pest exterminator. You know that's the idea, this is a pest. Instead of actually learning to live with it and make friends with it and cultivate it, we always want to get rid of them, exterminate them. That's why sometimes, you have a husband or a wife, it doesn't work out. How can I exterminate it? Sometimes what you want to do, you want to get rid of things. It's much, much better, more interesting to learn how to live with them. And have this beautiful relationship. Even with what other animals do you like to get rid of? What pests in your house? Like mice. I remember having this argument with people over in Singapore. I like mice. They're really cute, especially the ones over here. They don't harm anybody. Same with spiders. Do you like spiders? They're very nice. They do all this job of keeping all the mosquitoes and flies away. What do you want to get rid of them for? Can't you see the great advantage of animals? You don't know how to live with them, make peace with them. What was it over in Chithurst Monastery in UK many years ago? They had a problem with too many rabbits. And they don't mind rabbits. Rabbits are nice. You got any rabbits over in Anukampa? Not yet, you will have. Probably. But anyway, with the rabbits, they had a problem because all the local neighbours said you've got to eradicate them. We don't want to eradicate them. We don't want to harm little rabbits. So they decided, innovative solution, to put up a rabbit fence around the monastery. Not to keep the rabbits out, but to keep the rabbits in. So if you were inside Chittos monastery, it was like sanctuary. So the rabbits actually could stay very happy in there. That's what they said. And so they have heaps of rabbits there, and they actually, when I went there anyway, they were very friendly. They weren't afraid, because that was their little home. And what the monks said at that time, they hadn't multiplied at all. You know, they'd actually found their optimal level and stayed like that. So it was a kind of great experiment, a nice, kind one. So if you have any rabbits or mice or whatever in your house, or spiders or flies, make friends with them, and then you can live in harmony with them. Can you? Just make sure you get a Buddhist health inspector, otherwise they may fine you. Respect Ajahn, I've listened to all your talks so many times. Have you? No one has listened to my talks and jokes and similes more than I have. I've heard them so many times. You know what I keep repeating them? Because every time they have a deeper meaning. If you are now fully enlightened, fair enough, you don't have to listen to them ever again. I can actually repeat them verbatim. Obviously, it is... No, you can't. Let's get a good example. Okay. What's a nice example of hearing the talk and also find out who wrote this? What? You confessing? No. Okay, so what? I don't know, someone once in the cave. Okay, sorry, you got me there. I'm getting tired. I've heard this thing so many times, but anyway, obviously it's helped enormously to tick this, to tie this samsara, but could be request for some deeper Dhamma sutras on this retreat, as listening to deeper Dhamma on Podbean for monastics doesn't have that profound effect of listening to you in person, with palms folded together. Deeper Dhamma? Okay, this is pretty deep Dhamma. There was once, this person told the story that he was in West Australia, up the north, working in the mines. That's pretty deep. Oh, come on, give me a chance. About 200 feet underground. And his job was actually put the explosives in the mine and blow the face of the mine in the evening or night time when no one else was around. Did it by himself. And so that it was much safer, and the following morning the rest of the crew would actually work during the day to use their pickaxes to actually take away the ore which was being mined. But the only safe way of doing this was he went there by himself in the evening. And he said that one evening he did have kind of a funny feeling, a kind of a premonition that something might go wrong. So he checked all his equipment very carefully, and there's nothing wrong with his equipment. He drilled the holes in the rock face of the mine, deep underground, and then when he put the the explosives in, that's actually where they hadn't set the detonators in yet. That's when he heard like a sound. One of the workers, when they finished, hadn't put the brakes on one of the carts. And so he heard the sound of one of these heavy iron carts used to transport the ore to the surface, come running down the track towards him. And he had no place to escape. And so as it came closer and closer, that it came so close to him, the only thing he thought of doing, there's no place to hide, was to jump. And when that iron ore truck hit him, it took off the bottom of his legs. And he's by himself there. And fortunately, it's incredible pain. No place to hide, no place to call. He had to wait until the morning shift came. He survived. But during that time, he was laying down there. He said, it's really strange. It hurt like hell, but after a while, just he got to some sort of being at ease with the pain. And then he had this amazing, what they used to call in those days, spiritual experiences. And it was so profound that, when they found him and he wasn't dead, and they took him to the hospital and he kind of recovered, the person responsible for not putting the brakes on properly on that cart, came to see him in the hospital. And the fellow who was injured shouted at him, "It's okay, mate, it's okay. Look, I had this amazing experience and it was kind of worth it." And that scared, the guy who left the brakes off so much that he ran away and he never saw him again. Number one, the power of forgiveness. And sometimes what happens when you have like trauma, sometimes you can be so amazingly generous, you can forgive. And even that incredible pain, losing a lot of blood, it gave him the opportunity to have this deep understanding about nature. And he said that was one of the most amazing experiences he's ever had. He would not give that up if he had a choice. He survived. It's pretty deep. Quite a long way underground. You're testing me, but that's the best I could do. Again, it's almost 9 o'clock. Shall I do one more question? If we just relax to the max with all phenomena, including some contact and consciousness, effortlessly self-liberate, or is it more active practice required? Once you get to the habitual how to relax to the max, what does that mean? In other words, you let, even like pain, you let pain expand rather than contract. And you think, well, that just makes it worse, doesn't it? A lot of times, it's like it dilutes it. From like a block of ice, it's very hard. It melts and it just gets water, which is quite soft, and it expands until it's just mist, and it expands until you can't even see it anymore. So that idea of expansion, letting sort of things be and expand, makes actually even pain or difficulties less intense. Effortlessly self-liberate eventually, or is it more active practice required? A lot of time, the active practice, I always say, is learning how to, all the effort goes to sit on your cushion or your chair. And once you're sitting on there, then learn how to let go. Okay, I know, I can feel I'm getting tired now. Don't know about you guys, if you still listen to me. There's only a few left. Excellent. I think that's enough for today. Some people have already fallen asleep. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have I gone on too long? It's now 9 o'clock. For many of you, what time do you usually go to bed at home? 9? 9:30, 10? The night is still young. Okay, those who want to meditate, please meditate. If you're tired out, like this old monk, you go back to your room. Thank you for listening. Yeah. Yeah, it could be hate. As soon as we find who this is, then we can ask them. No, that's good. Oh boy.